Have you ever imagined that one ordinary day, your life could be turned upside down? Not because of something you did, but because someone decided you didn't belong. A woman calmly sitting in a park suddenly becomes a target. What would you do if you had to face a situation like this, simply because of the color of your skin? And what happens when you come face to face with baseless hatred? This story isn't just about racism. It's about the hidden strength within every person. Where do we draw the line in this fight? Can hatred be defeated simply by holding on to justice? Join us as we uncover this story. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe so you won't miss more inspiring stories. Step into Amelia's journey, where everything can change in an instant. Amelia sat on a bench in Ridgewood Park, feeling the crisp autumn breeze brush against her skin. She smiled, enjoying a rare moment of peace that work and life seldom allowed her. The afternoon was serene. The last rays of sunlight kissed her skin, while the rustling leaves beneath her feet created a soothing melody. A fresh Starbucks coffee in her hands made her feel even more relaxed. At that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. It was just her and this fleeting sense of tranquility. But peace never lasts. As her eyes casually met those of a passing woman, Amelia had no idea her life was about to be turned upside down. The woman who saw too much in Natalie Robinson, wealthy, elegant, and seemingly composed, stopped mid-step, her eyes coldly scanning Amelia. Something about her stare sent a chill through Amelia's body. She didn't know why, but she could sense the tension in Natalie's gaze. "Excuse me, but who exactly are you to be sitting here?" Her tone was polite, but laced with something else, something colder. Amelia, taken aback, managed a polite smile. "I'm just relaxing, like everyone else," she replied, keeping her voice calm. But that wasn't the answer Natalie wanted. Her expression hardened. "You don't belong here." The words were sharp, blunt, unmistakably clear. A wave of frustration rose inside Amelia, but she held onto her composure. "This is a public park. Everyone has a right to be here." Her voice was steady, but firm. She wouldn't allow herself to be dismissed so easily. But Natalie had already made up her mind. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. The call that changed everything. Amelia's breath caught. Reality hit her like a punch to the chest. This wasn't just an argument, it was a power move, a tactic, a game she never agreed to play. She wasn't causing trouble. She wasn't breaking the law. She was just sitting there. But now she was being labeled a threat. How? How could something so simple, sitting on a park bench enjoying an afternoon, become a crime? A numbness spread from her fingertips to her chest. Was this the world she had to face every day? A world where existing in the wrong place, at the wrong time, in the wrong skin, could make her a suspect. When justice is put to the test. The sound of police sirens echoed from a distance. Inside Amelia, two emotions clashed, fear and hope. Would justice fail her again? Or was this the moment she could stand her ground? The next few minutes would lead to the biggest decision of her life, a decision no one should ever have to make. And in that moment, Amelia realized something profound. Every second of this battle, every breath she took, every word she chose, could become a defining moment, a moment that would prove one thing. Sometimes staying calm is the strongest weapon you have. As Natalie stepped back, phone in hand, Amelia felt the atmosphere shift. She remained seated on the bench, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Everything around her seemed to blur, fading into the background, leaving only Natalie's voice echoing in her ears. "Not everyone has the right to sit here," Natalie remarked, her tone unwavering. Amelia took a slow, steady breath, pushing down the anger rising within her. But then, the shrill ring of Natalie's phone broke the silence, snapping Amelia back to the present. Her sharp words cut through the air. "I need assistance. There's a suspicious person in the park refusing to show ID. She looks dangerous." A heat rushed to Amelia's face, an indescribable tension tightening in her chest. She wanted to stand up and defend herself, to counter the false accusations. But she forced herself to stay calm. She knew that if she acted out of emotion, the situation could spiral out of control. She was a grown woman, a strong woman, and she would not let herself be diminished. When the police arrived, the weight of injustice grew heavier. The sight of officers approaching sent a cold wave of apprehension through Amelia's body. Her heartbeat quickened, a deep unease settling in her stomach. The officers' expressions were unreadable, their eyes filled with scrutiny, not concern. "Who are you?" one of them asked. A jolt of shock ran through Amelia. Their tone wasn't neutral. It carried assumption, an immediate presumption of guilt. Natalie stood behind them, her smug expression making it clear she believed she had won. Meanwhile, Amelia, facing the supposed justice system, felt like a defendant on trial for simply existing. "There was no reason to call the police," Amelia said, but her voice wavered with unease. She looked at the officers, hoping they would see the truth. But their expressions remained cold, indifferent. She could feel the bias like an invisible force weighing down on her. An unexpected voice broke the silence. As the officers examined her ID, Natalie took another step back. Convinced Amelia was about to be removed, she didn't bother hiding the victory in her eyes. "She doesn't belong here," Natalie murmured under her breath. But then something unexpected happened. A young man who had been sitting nearby stepped forward. He was a teenager with curly hair, holding a skateboard, someone who, at first glance, seemed unrelated to the situation. But as he observed the tension building, he decided to speak up. "I'm a witness. I saw everything from the beginning. She didn't do anything." He turned to the officers and added, "She was just sitting here reading, not causing any trouble." His words shifted the energy in the park. It was like a fresh breeze cutting through the oppressive weight of prejudice. Amelia felt a flicker of hope, a connection to the power of truth. The officers hesitated. The sincerity in the teenager's voice disrupted their assumptions. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across their faces. The power of a single voice. Natalie, however, wasn't ready to back down. She tried to prolong the tension, but something had shifted. Amelia, though silent, felt her hope growing. Eventually, the officers left. No clear action was taken, but the teenager's voice had changed the course of events. As Amelia reflected, she realized something profound. In a world filled with prejudice and snap judgments, sometimes one voice of fairness, one moment of empathy, is enough to stand strong. She didn't have to fight everyone. She just needed to hold on to truth and justice, no matter how many obstacles stood in her way. Amelia felt her heart pounding as the officer's eyes locked onto her, but she refused to let fear consume her. Even though Natalie's false accusations could cost her everything, Amelia remained remarkably composed. She couldn't let the rising tension shake her resolve. With every passing second, Natalie's words crashed against her like relentless waves. But Amelia stood firm. She would not break. This wasn't just about her own fight anymore. This was for everyone like her, those who had endured discrimination, injustice, and senseless judgment. The unexpected shift. The officers hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. There was a flicker of doubt in their eyes, but they didn't act. Not yet. Amelia offered no excuses. She remained silent, despite the frustration swelling inside her. She had faced countless unjust confrontations before, but this time was different. This was about principle, and she was not backing down. She noticed subtle shifts in the crowd around her. Though they didn't know her story, some of them understood the truth. Their silent expressions sent a clear message. They stood for justice, not because they knew her, but because they knew what was right. Amelia didn't need to argue. Her calmness and courage spoke for her. This wasn't just a battle against one woman's hatred. This was about proving she belonged, just as much as anyone else. The trap. As the officers questioned her, a cold realization crept in. A strange feeling prickled at the edges of her thoughts. Something wasn't right. The way they spoke to her, the way Natalie stood smugly behind them. It felt scripted, like a performance, like a trap. A chilling thought surfaced. Was this planned? Had Natalie orchestrated something bigger than a mere false accusation? Her hands remained steady, but inside a storm raged. She locked eyes with the officers, knowing that whatever they believed at this moment could change everything. She couldn't let fear cloud her mind. Then, the unthinkable happened. One officer received a report from his partner. A bag of illegal substances had been discovered in her car. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't real. This wasn't coincidence. Natalie had planted it. This was a setup, a meticulously planned trap. Staying in control rage flared inside Amelia. But something else took over. Clarity. She had been framed, but she refused to let emotions dictate her response. Instead, she took a slow breath and spoke, her voice steady, unwavering. "There is nothing happening here that I can't handle." Her words weren't defensive. They were a declaration. She wasn't powerless. She knew the truth would come out, no matter what. She had faced bias, injustice, and manipulation before. But she had also learned that staying composed was the most powerful weapon. And so, Amelia stood tall, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been in her place. She wasn't afraid of Natalie's schemes. Her calmness became her shield. Her unshaken resolve silenced the lies. Because in the end, justice would prevail, and Amelia would not be broken. Amelia felt every second of tension dragging on, as if time had slowed. Her heart pounded against her ribs, but she refused to let it show. The accusations from Natalie, the scrutiny from the officers, and the inescapable pressure swirled around her like a storm. She knew any reaction could escalate things further, so she did the only thing she could. She held her ground. Her composure was her greatest weapon at this moment. Standing her ground. Natalie's relentless claims were a psychological assault. Every word cut through her like a blade, igniting a fire of anger and disbelief. But Amelia would not give her the satisfaction of breaking. She couldn't believe that someone she had never met could go to such extremes just to see her removed from a public space. Yet this was her reality. And the more Natalie spoke, the more Amelia's resolve hardened. This wasn't just about herself anymore. This was about justice, a test of willpower. Every question from the officers felt like a test, a challenge to see if she would bend, falter, or break. But Amelia met each one calmly, directly. Her voice didn't waver. Her gaze never dropped. She was not afraid, because she knew the truth was on her side. The moment of truth. As Amelia scanned the faces around her, she could feel the weight of judgment. People who had once seen her as a suspect were now forced to reckon with an unexpected reality. She had stayed silent long enough. Taking a deep breath, her eyes burned with clarity as she finally spoke. "The truth is, I'm not just an ordinary citizen. I'm a CIA agent." Her words landed like a bomb. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still. Every officer, every bystander, even Natalie, they all froze. Confusion, shock, and disbelief spread across their faces. The false accusations, the elaborate deception, they had just been shattered in an instant. Reclaiming power. Amelia could feel the shift in the atmosphere. She was no longer just a target. She was no longer the accused. She was someone who had given up everything for duty. And now, she was taking back control. She had never wanted to use her status to defend herself. But if truth was the only way to end this injustice, then she would not hesitate. She stood unshaken, because this wasn't just a battle of survival, it was a battle for integrity. A new chapter begins. The weight of her revelation settled over the crowd. Some would never look at her the same way again. She had changed the narrative. But in a world full of doubt and suspicion, could justice truly prevail? She wasn't sure, but one thing was clear. She refused to be defeated. She had trained for this. She had lived through worse. And now, as the truth finally came to light, she felt something unexpected. Hope, because her fight wasn't over. It was just the beginning. Everything had changed. As the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, Amelia felt an unfamiliar sense of relief. The long and grueling battle she had fought was finally reaching its conclusion. But this time, she was not the one under scrutiny. It was Natalie Robinson and her accomplice, Samuel, two people who had once basked in the illusion of power, now cornered by the full force of the CIA and FBI. The unraveling of a conspiracy. The door swung open. Agents from both the CIA and FBI entered, their expressions set in stone, their movements precise and deliberate. Natalie and Samuel, once so confident in their influence and untouchable status, now stood frozen, faces pale, eyes wide with fear. They had never imagined that the very system they thought they had manipulated so well would turn against them so swiftly. The elaborate web of deception and corruption they had built, exposed. The evidence gathered over months of investigation, the witnesses who had come forward, the classified documents proving their crimes. It all led to this moment. A moment where power meant nothing. A moment where truth prevailed. Justice or just another battle? Even as they were taken into custody, Amelia's mind remained restless. Were Natalie and Samuel just small players in a much larger scheme? Had the real masterminds already begun covering their tracks? Or was this proof that justice, no matter how delayed, would always find a way? The questions lingered, but one thing was certain. The weight of corruption had finally been lifted. A moment of reflection. Stepping away from the interrogation room, Amelia felt a strange stillness settle inside her. The relentless pursuit of justice, the covert operations, the strategic battles. All of it now seemed like echoes in the quiet afternoon air. She had spent so much time fighting, carrying the burden of exposing the truth, and now it was done. Justice had been served. She turned back for a brief moment, her eyes landing on the glass window of the room where Natalie and Samuel now sat. Powerless. The very people who once controlled others through lies and greed were now forced to face the truth. And in that realization, Amelia felt something deeper than relief. Hope. Hope that this wasn't just another case, but a true turning point. Hope that the world still had people willing to fight for the right thing. Hope that even in darkness, light could always break through. The aftermath. Yet as much as she wanted to believe in change, a question tugged at her mind. Would this truly make a difference? Would more people stand up against injustice? Or was this victory just a fleeting moment before another wave of corruption took its place? She paused before the exit, her thoughts caught between the past she had fought against and the future still uncertain. Amelia had done what was right, not for recognition, not for revenge, but because some battles are fought not for personal gain, but for those who have no voice. And that, she knew, was a victory worth every sacrifice, a world still worth fighting. For Natalie and Samuel had fallen, their influence crumbled, their power destroyed. Yet Amelia felt no hatred toward them, only a quiet certainty that this was the reason she fought, that exposing greed and deception was more than a mission. It was a step towards something greater. And even if the fight was far from over, even if more darkness awaited, she knew, as long as there were people like her willing to fight for the truth, there would always be light. Justice had been served, but the questions remained. Even though everything was over, a part of Amelia couldn't forget the tension that had gripped her for so long. The battle wasn't just about justice. It was about honor, resilience, and unwavering determination. The emotions lingered, crashing against her like relentless waves against the shore. She knew those moments would remain etched into her life forever. A heavy price for justice. She let out a deep sigh, gazing out the window, reflecting on a hard truth. Justice was never handed out easily. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every agonizing decision, they all came with a cost, and yet one question still echoed in her mind. Had she truly achieved justice? Or had she simply played her role in a system that continued to function as it always had? There was no easy answer, but one thing she did know: she had done the right thing. Power that money couldn't buy justice had not been delivered through force or threats. It had been won through courage, perseverance, and undeniable truth. Though the sense of victory felt fleeting, Amelia understood something much deeper. Respect, integrity, and dignity. Things that many believed could be bought with wealth or power could only be earned. The consequence of greed. The images of Natalie Robinson and Samuel, once so confident in their deception and schemes, now facing the consequences of their own greed, remained vivid in Amelia's mind. Now she could finally breathe, because she knew this fight had not been in vain. One right action, no matter how small, could create a ripple effect of change. A path forward, with clarity and renewed determination, Amelia returned to her work. She had learned something invaluable. Justice was never simple, but when it was truly achieved, it upheld the values that mattered most. No matter how many challenges lay ahead, she would continue walking this path, believing in the cause she had chosen. The fall of Natalie and Samuel. They never saw this coming. Natalie and Samuel had spent years weaving their plans, meticulously hiding their ambitions. But now, it was all collapsing. Their own actions had become their downfall. Standing before the courthouse, they faced not only the judgment of the law, but the eyes of the public. The face of justice. Amelia stood outside, a living testament to justice. She had fought tirelessly, not for revenge, but for truth. Though she never wished for a bitter end for those driven by greed, she could not change the outcome. She had done everything in her power to bring real justice, not just for herself, but for those who had suffered in silence. The verdict. As the judge's ruling echoed through the courtroom, a strange wave of emotion washed over Amelia, Natalie, and Samuel. The very people who had orchestrated elaborate schemes, who had manipulated the system for their own gain, were now stripped of everything. Their careers destroyed, their reputations in ruins, their futures uncertain. Every lie, every calculated move, every power play had led them here, to the harsh reality of their own undoing, the price of their choices. For the first time, Amelia saw something in Natalie and Samuel's eyes. Regret. Did they finally realize the cost of their greed? Would they ever acknowledge the damage they had caused? The courtroom fell into a heavy silence, and for a moment, Amelia felt something unexpected, an emptiness, the weight of victory. As she stepped outside the courthouse, she felt both relief and uncertainty. Justice had been served. But was the price worth it? Would there be more battles ahead for what she believed in? She didn't know, but one thing was certain. She would keep going. She would continue to fight for the truth, because truth can never be hidden forever. And today, once again, justice had prevailed. Amelia walked out of the interrogation room, one step at a time. Each step was firm, resolute, as if the wind outside carried with it the whispers of justice. Behind her, the dark web of corruption had been unraveled, exposed for what it truly was. She had fought relentlessly to bring this truth to light. Her silence was not indifference. It was the clarity of one who had faced the truth and emerged victorious. A heavy weight lifted. The tension that had clung to her for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet peace and newfound hope. Her efforts, once unseen, once unrecognized, had finally found their reward, not in glory or recognition, but in the simple, undeniable truth. She had made a difference. Justice is not easily won. Looking ahead, Amelia knew. The road forward would be long. The battle was far from over. People like Natalie and Samuel would continue to lurk in the shadows, twisting the truth to serve their own ambitions. But she had learned something invaluable. The truth always finds a way to reveal itself. Sometimes it only takes one person to stand up, one voice to speak out, one act of courage to spark a revolution. A deeper understanding of justice. But there was something unexpected Amelia had realized. Justice was not just about punishment, it was about restoring faith. Faith in herself, faith in the work she had done, faith that every step she took was part of a much larger movement for change. The question echoed in her mind. Would the system ever be truly just? Could the truth always be protected? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing. She would never stop fighting. A connection beyond herself. She felt an undeniable connection with the people she had helped, the ones who had witnessed this change unfold before them. Every effort she made, no matter how small, had contributed to a greater cause. A world where justice and truth could never be hidden. She walked forward, not just for justice, but for all those who had stood by her, fought beside her, and believed in a better future. She hadn't just completed a mission, she had proven that one person could change the world, one determined step at a time. The legacy of Amelia's story, Amelia's story is a testament to resilience and the power of truth. The greatest lesson it offers is this: no matter how immense the pressure, no matter how difficult the trials, integrity and justice will always prevail. She didn't just expose corruption, she proved that even the smallest actions could create waves of change. A call to stand for what's right. This wasn't about quick victories. It was about the ability to hold on to what is right, even when the world refuses to see it. Her story is a reminder that sometimes one person's courage is all it takes to light the way for many others. Beyond the trials, beyond the battles, justice is not just about punishment. It is about standing firm, even when the world shakes around you. It is about fighting for the truth, not just for yourself, but for everyone who needs it.